So I love the author John Green. I think we might have talked about this before.
Yes.
He's all over the internet. He has been for years. Right now, he can be found all over the internet doing everything he possibly can to spread information about tuberculosis and how easy it would be to give people all over the world care and help with their tuberculosis diagnoses if they would just have one company that would be willing to make very slightly less profit in a year. That's kind of his thing right now.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's actually like doing crazy work. It's really, really interesting. But I've been reading his books. I've been watching his YouTube. I've been listening to his podcast for I don't know, like 7 or 8 years now for a while.
Yeah.
And I just really enjoy him and his brother's content, their books. I enjoy listening to what they have to say. But
do they have like a third brother? Is there like a
just them two?
Okay, yeah.
They have a YouTube channel called the Vlog Brothers.
Yes.
It's like a big thing on YouTube.
I think I watched the Vlog Brothers in high school.
Yeah, they have been doing it for I want to say since maybe 2006 or something like that, like a long, long time.
It's crazy.
But he did this thing about 5 years ago. They have this like funny, never used like gaming channel where he did this thing where he played Fortnite as a pacifist. And if you don't know about Fortnite, let me explain it to you. I'm assuming you probably do. But here's the thing. Fortnite, the goal is to be the last person standing out of 100 people. It's 100 people onto an island. How you become the last person standing is by shooting and killing the other people. So playing this game, it's a cartoony game. It's no blood.
Yeah,
it's
I was
not
going to say,
violent.
in a fun way.
Yeah, it's a fun thing, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, they call them eliminations. Like they don't even use the word kill, right? Because it's like kids play. It's a cartoony game. But here's the thing: you got to get rid of people. That's how you win. And so playing this game as a pacifist is not a good idea. Not killing people is not the way to do good in Fortnite, but he would just stream himself playing this game for hours, just not killing anyone. And it was hilarious because he would talk about it, and he has no idea how to play the game. He barely knows how to run around in the game. So it's just kind of a funny thing to watch. And it's mostly, I think, just a way for him to just talk and, be entertaining.
Sure.
And it was entertaining. But it was hilarious. But the thing is, you can tell anyone with the brains understands that's not the way to play Fortnite. Well, it turns out that might be wrong. Because I learned about this guy who maybe plays the game a little bit like this and maybe is very successful. Fortnite has since 5 years, they've come out with a really robust ranked play system where you can you get rewarded for your performance in a game, and then you get badges for how good you are, right? And anyone who's played a PvP game probably understands how a rank system works, but it'll be bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and based on how you do, you work your way through the ranks, and you get to play against harder and harder people, better people who are better and better. You get matched with better people, and so in Fortnite, the highest rank you can get is Unreal. Well, there's this streamer I stumbled upon. I found him a good bit ago. I watch him once in a while, but he goes by the name Bush Camp Dad. And guess what he does?
Doesn't shoot?
He bush camps. He will drop down out of the bus in the game and just stand there where he thinks no one's going to be.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he'll basically just... He plays the game as a pacifist, just like John Green. And the thing is, he's figured out how the ranking system works in the game, right? He plays ranked, and he is an Unreal rank, which is the very top. We're talking the very, very top 0.0%. It's a very, very high-level player you have to be to get into this.
Yeah.
Except he's sort of figured out, unlike anyone could figure out, how the ranking system works and how you earn points. He's learned more than anyone else just because of the way he decided to try to play the game. He started playing Fortnite when his kids wanted to play, and he thought, well, let me check it out and make sure it's okay for my kids to play.
Yeah.
And when he did that, he realized, I'm not good at fighting, but I really think this is fun. And so he kind of came up with his own way to effectively play.
Wow.
And so he decided he would just hide, right? And so he'll drop in one place, and he'll hide. And how it works in Fortnite is there's this circle, and you can't go out of the circle, and the circle gets smaller and smaller, right? And so they'll you get to see where the circle is, and you get some time to get there, right? So he's kind of figured out how the random algorithm works and how the circle works, and he's figured out where it might go and or the odds of it going a certain way, and so he kind of knows where to hide. But he's also figured out the most effective ways to hide without being seen. He's also figured out what's more important in a game than eliminating people is your placement in the game. So if you happen to get 5th place and eliminate nobody, it's actually much, much better than if you had 10 eliminations and you got 60th place.
Interesting.
And so he's learned also that not only if you get 5th place is it good, but you can get double or triple or extra points if you make it that far and take no damage. And so he will play an entire game. He'll hide in a bush the whole time. And this will take 20, 25 minutes, right? Because the games take a while. He won't see anyone. He will purposely not see anyone. And he'll get to 5th place, take no damage, and get back out of the game. Because he realizes I still get the points. I get bonus points for not taking damage. And so he's like just got this whole thing down to a system. And what's so fun about this is he tried this game to see if his kids liked it, but he decided, well, I kind of like this too. He works from home. He plays all day while he works from home. He'll sit on his couch with his computer, drop into the game. He'll sit there and he's streaming this whole time, right?
Right.
And he'll like occasionally look up and talk to you, occasionally look over his computer, type his stuff. Occasionally maybe work's over. He's done with work. He'll sit on his couch and he'll sit with his 2 dogs and he'll drop in and just stand there, and they'll talk for a while. He's a really smart guy. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And he's not quite John Green level. Like he will shoot at somebody if it arises, right? But he's actually gaining a little popularity now, and like he's getting to the point where like people will find him and like give him good stuff because you know like because they like if you happen to get in the same game, which isn't that easy, but like it's something you can do if you watch him enough and try.
It's almost like he's a secret unlock that you're discovering.
That's right. It's like a mini game for you to try to find him in a game, right?
Yeah.
But it's just crazy. Like I just loved figuring out that like he's like figured out not even really game the system. He just enjoys playing it, but he enjoys like not really playing it. It's really fascinating. But I love watching this guy. I've loved seeing him gain a little popularity. I've loved seeing he has funny like YouTube shorts. He's actually collaborated with like a huge Fortnite streamer, so he's just gaining a lot of popularity. I'm really happy for him. He gives away most of the money he makes just like doing giveaways and like dumb stuff, giving out gift cards and
That's
stuff
awesome.
like that. It is cool. It's just like he enjoys it. It's so fun to watch. And so he can be found streaming most days from what I can tell during his work time, during maybe your work time, sure. But he's just an entertaining guy to listen to. He's an entertaining guy to learn from. If you happen to be looking to listen to a monologue from a pretty entertaining and relatively smart middle-aged guy, I can't recommend Bush Camp Dad enough.
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but we're going to tell you about it anyways. I'm Payton Gessel.
And I'm Chris Humphreys.
So over the past couple of years, I have developed a bit of a video game rotation schedule where I try to play certain types of games at certain times of the year to try to match up what I may be doing or what I'm not able to do at the time. So for example, like in the summer months, I'm usually playing a lot of handheld games. So that way I can go take a picnic blanket out to a park, just lay on a picnic blanket and play my Switch or whatever. So in the winter, though, I usually am hunkered down. There's not a lot I can do outside. So that's normal when I'm playing on my computer. And it's dark out a lot as well. Mm-hmm. So I like to play games that are maybe a little bit more scary that I can play at nighttime and, like use the PC so that way I'm not wasting all the beautiful times outside.
Right.
And, yeah. So I've been noticing that I've been coming back to a specific kind of video game in the winter recently. And I did this again this past year. And I would describe this as like a supernatural murder mystery video game. And that doesn't really fit into a genre of games. And it kind of spans many different kinds. Like sometimes it's an RPG, it's a role-playing game. Sometimes it's a visual novel. Other times it might be survival horror. And I think the different ways that it can manifest as different genres is what makes it kind of fun and relaxing for me. And I was thinking about how it makes sense that I would be into the idea of a murder mystery because I grew up around a lot of people that enjoy murder mysteries in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
In the 90s, my family would watch a lot of Matlock.
Mine too.
Yes, exactly. And in the 2000s, they switched over to watching CSI and some of those kind of shows. I know like a few years ago, there was a TV show that my dad would watch that was about some sort of murder mystery or maybe just mysteries. And it was about a monk named Brother Cadfael.
Okay.
And then he also watches Monk, which is not a monk, right?
That's a good show though.
Right.
I
for
like
sure.
it.
Yes. So and I thought well, that's kind of funny that he watches like a murder mystery show about monks. But then I thought like the video game I played last winter, it was a murder mystery video game about monks. So I can see where I get it from. But there was one TV show about a murder mystery that no one in my family ever really watched. And I ended up watching it a few years ago. Have you heard of Twin Peaks?
I have heard of it. Yes.
Okay.
I've never watched.
Yes. And have you heard of Twin Peaks, the restaurant?
No.
You should not go there. And I found one recently. I was driving by. I was like, wait, is this like the TV show? It's like a knockoff Hooters.
Oh, really?
Yes, you can guess what the Peaks might be.
Yeah.
Yes. So no affiliation between
Not
Twin
a
Peaks.
horror restaurant experience.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks, the show, was directed by David Lynch, and this came out in like 1990 and 1991, and it was very influential in this kind of murder mystery genre, and it was very supernatural, and to the point where if there's like a movie or like a video game or a TV show that kind of does similar things to Twin Peaks, some people might refer to that as being Lynchian because it's in the style of David Lynch. The basic premise of Twin Peaks is that it's a murder mystery in the Pacific Northwest, and kind of weird things will happen as this FBI agent is exploring this town. And over the last 30 years or so of new different types of video games and movies and TV shows to kind of taking after it, there are very specific tropes that you can find in almost any sort of Lynchian film or game. The story usually centers around a small town in the Pacific Northwest surrounded by forests.
Okay.
So not that weird at this point.
No.
Characters are always obsessed about coffee. They want to talk about drinking coffee.
And that's kind of a...
Right. Exactly.
That makes sense out there, too.
They love diner coffee. They'll be like, oh, the coffee at this diner, this is the best coffee. Yeah, which I would not normally think. The protagonists and antagonists of these kind of media, they're usually in some sort of like cat and mouse chase through different dimensions. Someone is always in like a bad dimension trying to get out. Someone's in a good dimension who's getting sucked in, and like they're always kind of fighting against each other. There's usually some sort of doppelganger scenario.
Okay.
Is the person I'm talking to the good version or the bad version? But probably my favorite trope of like Lynchian media is that people have conversations with inanimate objects.
Okay.
So the video game I was playing this winter in this sort of genre was the game Alan Wake 2, and I also played the first Alan Wake. Are you familiar with those games at all?
No.
It's kind of like if a Stephen King kind of character was in a horror story that they wrote.
Okay.
And they didn't realize they wrote the story.
Okay.
And the monsters that they had created in some sort of fugue state came to life, and they had to fight them and run away from them. So in Alan Wake 2, I found a document that the FBI wrote, and they were tailing this person who was believed to be in this murder cult. And I found this document, and I was reading through it about it, and it's this woman who works in the Pacific Northwest town of Bright Falls, and she works at a diner.
Okay.
And this is the report of what they said she did on that given day. 9:44 a.m. Spills a cup of coffee. Stares at coffee puddle and seems delighted. Begins talking animatedly to the puddle. Observer, not in diner. Did not hear her. So that one document checks off like all of those on the list.
Yeah, it does.
And there are like so many things like this in the game. There's points when like detectives will like drink coffee at the same time together and stare at the camera. Like it's a really weird thing, but I really enjoy the whole like talking to object talking back kind of thing that happens in the games. And this started in the TV show in Twin Peaks with the log lady. There was a woman who would walk around the town, and the detective might get a clue from her about like a lead on this murder case. And the detective would be like, "How do you know this?" And she would say, "My log told me." And she's just holding this log in her hand, and you don't know, like, is she just really good at gossip and she heard it and she's trying to protect somebody?
Right.
Is she crazy and she thinks this log in her hands is talking to her? Who knows?
Right.
There's a game I played called Disco Elysium, and there was a murder investigation, and you're doing an autopsy on the body, and you're like looking and seeing like, is there a gunshot wound? Were they strangled? And if you have the right skills, you can talk to the body and ask it, "How were you killed?"
That's funny.
And it will give you a hint of like,
wow.
I was strangled. Yeah, so like I could go on and on about examples of this even specifically in video games that are not Twin Peaks. They're not official at all. These are just like people liked this movie and they liked this TV show from 30 years ago and just make new stuff. But I love how unsettling that trope is of just like talking to the thing.
Yeah.
It looks like a person. I don't know why. It might have talked back to me. Who knows? And today, I want to talk to you about a similar real-world phenomenon that is kind of similar to this called pareidolia.
Okay.
So
Pareidolia.
Yes, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. I looked up like the Greek words it came from, and I think we'll say that's how you say it.
Sure.
So pareidolia is when people intake random sensory information and sometimes mistake it for useful intentional information. For example, when you look up at the sky and you see a cloud and you say, that cloud looks like a rabbit. Or when you see a power outlet like the one I'm looking at behind you right now, and it looks like a surprised face.
Sure.
Yeah, like these are examples of experiencing pareidolia. And the most common type is face pareidolia, when you see an object and say, that is a face. And your brain probably says, that's not a real face, but you still have that kind of subconscious thought of like, oh, that kind of looks like a person.
And then that's the only thing you can see for a while, where it's like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't even look at that without seeing that.
Exactly. And we have had so many of these in our kitchen in the last month where like, we were making dinner the other night and I just saw like a stain on our stovetop and I thought like, wow, that looks kind of like a skull. It looks like a good like album cover skull. So I could take a picture of that. And then the other day, like Amy's making breakfast and she's like, oh, come look quick. There's a face. And like take a picture of like this stain that she made on the counter. And what's funny is that cooking is actually where a lot of people experience pareidolia.
Okay.
In 1994, Diana Dicer made a grilled cheese sandwich. And she takes one bite out of this grilled cheese sandwich and she looks at it and she sees staring back at her the face of the Virgin Mary. And she immediately puts this sandwich away. She doesn't take another bite. She puts it in a plastic container for 10 years for safekeeping. And she cares about this thing a lot and doesn't want it to be damaged. And 10 years later, in 2004, that grilled cheese sandwich sells for $28,000.
No.
Yeah, and I remember when this happened.
I think I do too.
Yes, because right afterwards, there were a string of copycats. So you have the Holy Cheeto, the Nun Bun, the Pope Tart. Yes, and some of these were intentionally fake. They were like hoaxes to be funny. So like the Pope Tart, that one was never meant to be taken seriously.
Right.
It was like a comedian who said, I bet I could try to get this off the ground. Let me see how far I can go. But like for the Nun Bun, I think that one was serious by the people that did it, and then someone tried to cash in. So it was a cinnamon roll that looked like Mother Teresa, and this was right around the time when Mother Teresa had died. So it was like, oh, this is a sign of something about Mother Teresa.
Right.
So like I noticed that like obviously a lot of these things are happening with like Christianity-based symbols, but this goes across many religions. So for example, like in Islam, the Arabic way to write the word Allah is like the symbols are fairly simple compared to a lot of other Arabic symbols. So there are times when like Muslims will be walking down the street and they'll just see a tree and they'll be like, oh, it says Allah in it. So there's like a fairly common thing where people who are Muslim will see the word Allah written somewhere and say that like this is a sign, from Allah that I saw this on the tree or whatever. So like how does this even happen that we just experience pareidolia and say that stain looks like a skull? We talked a few months ago about the snake detection theory and how that uses the pulvinar region of the thalamus in the brain, and that's where we visually identify danger like snakes. So totally different area that handles this. The fusiform face area, or the FFA, is what helps identify facial recognition. But the problem is that it is very sensitive, maybe too sensitive, where anything that remotely resembles a face, it's going to tell the rest of our brain, yo, that's a face over there. So that way, like you see something that's even close and, you're going to say, yes, that power outlet looks surprised or whatever, because emotions are even factored into it as well. And this is one of the first triggers that happens when you're looking at sensory information that like, I think I'm probably not using the correct terms, but like the highway connecting that part to like the other parts of the brain it's one of the first things that happens, which is fascinating to me. And this even develops super early as well. Like infants as young as 9 months old can experience pareidolia.
Interesting.
Yes, where it's like they can see well enough to recognize faces, but like they have done tests on 9-month-old babies and they're like, yeah, they think this thing is a face and they might not think this is mom, but they think this might be a human. So at this point, I'd been kind of thinking about how pareidolia feels sort of like a glitch in the human brain. It's like we're hyperactive in this way, and it's like you got to keep this in check, or you become the crazy person, you become the log lady, or whatever. But I had it all wrong. I was working on a video recently for this wallpaper company, and we've been pitching ideas about like the creative expertise that goes into being an interior designer. And here's a section of the voiceover that we did for an early version of this video. Making connections where there is no visible relationship. Seeing something only apparent to you. Recognizing a pattern in unstructured elements. This is the hard work of creating. So I hear this and I'm like, oh no, does this lady have pareidolia? I was like, should we get her some help? And then it got me wondering, like, where do we draw the line between creativity and like a disorder or like, anything like that? Like, what's the difference between a successful artist and the lady who saw Mary in her grilled cheese sandwich?
Yeah.
Or is there a line? I don't know. And then I started reading into it and I found out that pareidolia was basically the Pinterest board of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. So like Leonardo da Vinci is quoted saying that like, hey, if you're looking for inspiration on your next painting, like stare at your wall long enough, look at some clouds, and eventually you'll see a face. Maybe tweak it a little bit, and like there's a new expression that you can use in your next painting.
Yeah, new thing to paint.
Right.
Wow.
And it makes sense because, well, like you didn't have a Pinterest board back then. You had to be wealthy enough to travel to see someone else's painting. Like if you're trying to get inspiration on something that you can't just go outside and see right now, that like, or you're worried that everyone's going to say, oh, you painted the same mountain that's outside your house again, that like just looking at the wood on your wall or looking at the cloud or whatever may give you just enough random sensory input, and then you tweak it a little bit to give you that creative spark in order to like make some new piece of art. And I don't have any like proof on this, but from what I'm reading, that pareidolia may even be more common in creative people. So I don't know like which comes first, if it's like you see faces better and then you become a better artist, or if it's like you're a better artist because you like to see faces in your power outlets and stuff. I do not know. But there's even like modern examples of this. There's an illustrator I like called Nathan Pyle. He has a webcomic called Strange Planet. I think they're making it into a TV show. But he had posted online at some point about like, if you're trying to build some sort of fantasy world map, you need to go to your grocery store parking lot when the snow is melting and look at like the way the slush snow melts. And it looks like here's a mountain and here's a valley and here's a river and like here's an archipelago and stuff. And it is crazy how just looking at these seemingly, randomly useless bits of information could give you the idea of how to make your fantasy world map. And doctors not only witness pareidolia, but they are encouraged to take advantage of pareidolia at work. Reading charts and scans can be very difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to see, like, is there a pattern emerging here? A lot of these like MRIs and CAT scans might be difficult to interpret, especially if you're a student who's trying to learn. And a lot of teachers, in these sort of settings, will come up with ways to help the future doctors remember the differences. For example, there is an area of your spine where you need to look for the winking owl. And if you see the winking owl in the spine, that means that there's cancer, like metastasizing in the spine.
Interesting.
But if you see both eyes in the beak of the owl, you're totally fine. And like another recent one is there's a hip bone scan that if everything is healthy in the patient, you will see the face of Baby Yoda.
Imagine like telling the patient, well, I saw the winking owl and I don't really want, you know what I mean? Like, I'd hate to tell you.
Yeah. You have winking owl disease, or as I like to call it, cancer. Yeah. And it's funny that like the winking owl is in there as well, because like owls are very common in Twin Peaks and in a lot of these other games as well, because it is this like mysterious thing in the woods. So it's even funny that like it's sort of related to it, because like horror and fiction like uses pareidolia to its advantage as well. So in like, I mentioned the coffee spill in Alan Wake, and that was meant to be funny. Like if you saw her doing this, it might have been creepier, but you're just reading like a report of this lady doing it. But Alan Wake games are full of like intentional examples. Like the load screens, they have this like blurry fog shape that moves around. And I found this TikTok of a guy who is convinced that they purposely hid a face in that loading screen, and I don't see it. And like, I'm worried that one of these days I'm just going to boot it up and just be like scared to death because I finally saw it after 20 hours. And there's a building in the game that like the main character is trapped in for a while in like a different dimension. And then in this building, like the windows are very circular and look like eyes, and like the door kind of looks like a beak and stuff, to where you're supposed to look at this thing and say, oh, that does kind of look like a face. It's kind of creepy. So like, when you're deep in the woods also, like, you're thinking you're seeing faces in the trees and in the shadows. So it can be used as a very effective way to just create that creepy atmosphere. And I have like one more opinion on this that I wanted to share from author C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
Yes. So C.S. Lewis is like known to be like a theologian, and he's also an author. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, and he wrote a lot of other a lot of other texts as well. And he has a take on pareidolia. He doesn't name it specifically, but he is looking at like the concept of like, we'll say religious pareidolia. You're seeing the Pope, Mother Teresa, Virgin Mary, things like that. And these all happened way after his time, but like these ideas. And he believed that our desire to prescribe meaning to random objects is kind of part of our human wiring. So he identified the idea of like religious pareidolia and logic as being two things that maybe people see as like being at odds, that like these two can't exist. It must be one or the other. And what he noticed in both of these is that people would rely on these, and both of them would have flaws. There are times when like, your brain is saying like an if-then statement, some sort of logical thing that should make sense, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And in the same way, you're looking at your environment and you think that there is some sort of religious meaning to this random thing, and sometimes you're wrong. But regardless of how many times they're wrong, people always come back to trying to rely on those things. And he doesn't see that as a mistake. And he feels like that, if you find the right way to kind of add both of those together, maybe not rely on just one, but both of them together, you can use that as a way to learn more about the world surrounding you, which was a lot more profound than I was expecting someone to have an opinion on about this thing. I came into thinking about pareidolia as just this, here's another weird human anomaly Payton wants to talk about. And I'm not going to lie, I've got like a half dozen of like things like this I've just heard about over the years of like, yeah, this would be a fun thing to talk about. But like after digging deeper, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Like it's something that you don't necessarily have to be ashamed of. Like when you're using it correctly, it can inspire creativity in all of us, really. So the next time you spill your coffee, take a picture of it. See if it speaks to you in a creative way. But whatever you do, don't speak back to it.
So we've talked about this before. You know this about me. Probably all you guys listening know this about me. I'm not the world's biggest sports fan. I really do enjoy going to sporting events in person. I enjoy going to baseball games, basketball games, football games, whatever. Like, I think it's fun. I think the experience is super cool. I like going to a big stadium and just seeing that kind of experience, seeing all the lights and how everything works. I really like the food. I like good hot dogs. I like nachos. I like whatever the crazy special thing of that stadium is. I think I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I really, really like an extra large fountain Coca-Cola. Like, I just like those kind of things, right? But as far as the actual sports go, it's not that I could take it or leave it. I mean, like when I'm there, I can be into it and I can enjoy it, but it's just not something that I seek out all that often. But one thing that has always intrigued me is in baseball. And even though I don't have a huge connection to any team or any player, the idea that sometimes someone hits a home run and someone catches it has always been fascinating to me. Like, you don't have to give it back. That's a souvenir that you have won, right? It's like, I've won a giveaway.
Right.
I caught this ball, and it's like, this is from a game. This is from a player. And it would be like, that would be my favorite player. I caught a ball from this player. You know what I mean?
Unless you get the pressure from it's the opposing team, and then everyone's mad. Have you ever been in a stadium when they're like, throw it back? Yeah,
they want you to throw it back. And it's like, but in my thing is, it's like, especially as someone who doesn't care, I'd be like, excuse me. I don't even, you know what I mean? The thing is, maybe you succumb to the pressure. I don't know. But I've always kind of been fascinated by that. I've always thought that'd be super cool. When I was growing up, maybe like when I was 12 first 12-ish years of my life, this isn't baseball, but the St. Louis Rams, and they're not even called the St. Louis Rams anymore. They trained, it's a football team. They trained in my town, the town I lived in.
Oh, wow.
And so me and my dad, or my family sometimes, but me and my dad would just go by like a training day, right? And they would have all kinds of like tourist things you could do. Like you could kick a football into an uprights, and they would play games and whatever. But you could just kind of stand by the fence and watch them do practices or watch them scrimmage or whatever. And one time, me and my dad were standing at the fence, like right off the edge, and the end zone is right in front of us. And they were kind of doing a little scrimmage thing, just the team against itself. And a guy scored a home run. A guy scored a touchdown, and he was doing his little celebration, right? And it was me and my dad and then this random kid about 2 feet away from me next to me. And in his celebration, he's jumping up and down and celebrating. He ran over to the kid next to me, threw him the football and gave him a high five. And I was like, oh, that is super
Wow.
cool. You know, again, I don't even remember what player it was. I don't know. I have no special connection. It's my family's team. You know, it's the LA Rams now. They don't train there anymore, but like my dad's a big fan of the team. So I liked it. But like, I don't know what player it was. I don't have that much connection, but man, it was so cool. I was so close to being the kid who got the football.
And if it was a training camp, it probably was just like a third string guy who got cut the next
week.
Yeah, but like, who cares?
Yeah,
it's still cool.
It's a cool experience. One that kid probably still remembers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was very, very cool.
On his podcast, he's talking about, I was the one that I got
that football. And I'm here talking about like, well, I was right next to that kid. But it was just like very cool. And it's the same thing with baseball. Not quite to the same extent, but I was kind of near people who had caught a ball before. And I thought, man, what would it be like to catch one of those? It probably could kind of hurt you even, right? Like it comes flying at you. It's a baseball. You're not prepared.
Yeah.
Like imagine like just grabbing that with your hand. Some people bring their baseball gloves and they catch it with that and whatever. But like I just was fascinated by that. It turns out I'm not the only one who thinks about this a lot. In fact, I'm not the only one who's interested in this. It's a real thing that there is a New York native, a man living in New York, lived there for a long time. His name is Zach Campbell, and he has caught over 12,000 baseballs. He's referred to as a serial ball catcher. Also, the term ball hawker is used. Okay,
wow.
He has made it his life's work to catch as many balls at as many stadiums as much as possible. He's turned this into like his actual career. This person is now like famous enough for catching balls at baseball stadiums that people know who he is. Like this 12,000. And I will state up front that this isn't just balls hit like home runs in games, right? Like this is like he will go at the very beginning. He'll catch as many batting practice balls as he can. He'll find balls that are in places that like, you know, got hit in a place no one can get to, and he'll figure out how to get them out, right? But like 12,000 balls.
Yeah, that doesn't take away from the achievement at all.
No, it's crazy, right?
In some ways, I think it makes it even better because it's not just that like, well, because if it was just home runs, then you only need to be between left field and right field.
Exactly.
But like he will go anywhere.
That's right. And he does not discriminate against where he goes. Okay, this man is willing to go wherever he has to go in the stadium to find these balls. Well, when Zach was 12 years old, he caught his first ball. He was into baseball. He was quoted as saying he's a baseball nerd. He just loves baseball. His whole life, he's loved everything baseball. And he used to see fans catching balls. And when he was very young, he thought that was super interesting. He went to his first game when he was 6 years old and didn't catch a ball until he was 12. So he missed 6 years of potential ball catching, and he's still at 12,000. I'm just saying. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But when he was 12 and he caught that first ball, Zach had officially caught the bug. And from that point on, the only thing he could think about, the only thing he could work on, the only thing he could work on in his mind is catching more balls at more stadiums. And so he turned it into a science. This man has it down to a science. He studies stadium seating charts. He studies batters' historical spreads of where the ball goes.
Oh, that's great.
And he even studies the weather patterns the day of the game so that he can pick the perfect spot to sit, the perfect ticket to buy, the perfect place to be, the perfect place to sneak to, whatever he has to do to get the highest chance of catching a ball during a game.
Please tell me he works out of like a van with a bunch of TVs in it. He's like, in our projections today are saying that left center field for the number 3 hitter is...
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't think he does, but it would not surprise me. Because the thing is, like, he cares about, above all, the best ball to catch is a game home run ball. He says that. But he's like, I just like getting balls. So like he goes every time as early as he can, gets as many, you know what I mean? He does it as much as he can. There's no other way to get as many as he's gotten.
Yeah.
He always goes early, and he always starts with batting practice. And he almost always catches a bunch of balls at batting practice. He also has even created a very rudimentary, but apparently very successful system for retrieving balls in places that aren't accessible to visitors. And maybe like down in a crevice, or maybe in like a landscaped courtyard that people aren't allowed to go in.
Yeah.
And he has a YouTube channel. It's like, again, through the years, he's gained a lot of popularity. It has like 650,000 subs, I think.
Ooh.
And on his YouTube channel, you can find him teaching you and showing off one of his best ball grabbing devices. And he does go into saying there are some stadiums that just don't allow devices at all. That's in their policy. But he's like, there are a lot of them who could care less because you're not doing anything, you know, whatever. Worst thing you're going to do is lose your device, right?
Right.
And so he's created this, if you want to call it a device, it's a baseball glove that is propped open with a Sharpie and a rubber band, a specific size rubber band. He's very clear about what size it is in the YouTube video, wrapped around the fingers of the glove. So it makes the glove closed but open. And what you do is you drop the glove. So say a ball's sitting on the ground. You drop the glove over the ball, and the rubber band is tight enough to be it's smaller than the baseball. So the baseball will pry itself through the rubber band in the glove, and the rubber band will expand, and then it will close, causing like a seat for the baseball to sit on. So it's almost like a manual vacuum cleaner that you can grab the ball with, and he'll put it on a string or on a rope and lower it down. And this works. Like, he showed it in videos. He's used it in real life. He's like, guys, you got to do this. And he's like, don't take my word for it. Like, practice this at home. Don't go to a place and assume it's going to work. You got to try it yourself, because it does work, but you got to make sure you know. He's like, different gloves work differently. You need different types of tension. You just got to practice, but it will work. This is a good device. Wow. It's basically, and I'm going to assume here, you haven't seen The Sandlot yet.
I have.
You watched it?
Yeah, I watched it.
Good. I'm very glad about that. Maybe we talked about that and I just don't remember.
It was the day after we recorded.
Okay, so do you remember the part where the ball is in the backyard?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're trying to retrieve it.
The dog.
And they have this big catcher's mitt on like a vacuum tube.
Yes.
This is basically what he made, except even less to go wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
So if some of the comments on the video are like, if the Sandlot kids knew this, they would have been playing with that Babe Ruth ball even more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's funny. But it's like, that's basically what he did. He came up with this thing to get a ball that he couldn't reach. And so that's how he's gotten some of his balls. But he just... the guy seems kind of like a blast, okay? Yeah. He seems like he's fun to be around. Not everyone thinks that, it turns out.
Maybe the left fielder is the third baseman.
There's a lot of people who are not crazy about this guy.
Is there any sort of like moral code he has about reaching over when a player is coming?
Well, there's been some things that have happened that would lead you to believe that no, he does not. You know, so like a ball that might not be a home run, but he caught it, so it is a home run.
Oh wow,
that kind of thing. And like there's a video of him basically stealing a ball out of a fielder's hands, like over the wall, and people are very mad at him. But he's like, I'm catching the ball, like. There's no. What are you gonna do? And he'll just leave. You know what I mean? Like he's like, what, you know. And he's even like he even wears like, because he's willing. He hops seats, right? Like for different times and different ways. And like if he thinks it's gonna be foul or whatever, like he'll stay in the home run territory, especially for the big ones. But like he'll bring like both teams' outfits and hats and jerseys so that like he fits in where he's sitting. Yeah, I mean he's above all. He's thinking above, right? I can really appreciate someone who gets into what they care about, and this guy gets into what he cares about. I mean, come on. I respect it when people do that. And here's the thing. Here's kind of what's fascinating is if you look at this statistically, outside of an actual player in the MLB, Zach has caught the most professionally used baseballs of any human. He's the person who has caught the most ever. Is that crazy?
Absolutely.
12,000. I mean, like, there's probably professional players who have not in a game touched that many balls.
Oh, absolutely. I think of like anybody who's probably a DH now. Like their goal was to get out of playing in the field as fast as possible, and like they play a position, and they're not catching.
Exactly. And so there's an interview. He's been doing this for like decades,
right?
And there's an interview with him in the New York Post, I think, and it kind of goes through what happens with him in a day. And so it starts out like this is from September 28th, of like a couple years ago. He goes to a Mets game at Citi Field. Gates open at 5:10 for everyone. And by 5:11, he is in his perfect spot in left field for batting practice. And by 5:12, he has caught his first ball at batting practice. Like, that's how efficient this guy is. Like, and during this just the batting practice, this one day, he caught 12 balls. So like this guy, like, and it says like he ended up catching 3 or 4 of them. He ended up getting thrown a couple balls, and that's the thing. It can be like thrown ones from players that they're just getting rid of.
Yeah, I think that counts.
But he also like, because it's batting practice and people don't really show up that early, like, or they're eating or drinking or whatever. Like there'll be one sitting in the bleachers and he'll just run and go get it.
Yeah, I mean that's how I've got most of the balls that I have over. Like I think I may have caught one at one point in my life, but I've probably had 2 or 3 more where it bounces off an empty seat, right? And then everyone's like, "Oh no!" And then I just walk over and get it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but like he, so that's what happens. He caught 12. He just knows where to stand. He knows where to go. He knows how to do it. That night, on the team, there's a player named Richard. I think it's Blyer. I don't know, but he actually happens to be a fan of Zach, and so whenever he has a ball to throw off, he'll just throw it off towards him. So he even has players sometimes, not all of them, of course, but players on his side who are willing to help out with his number, right? And so this night, I'm sure there was a couple given to him by that specific player. But in this interview, he kind of talks about how, I've just sort of garnered attention throughout the years doing this. He didn't necessarily, I mean, he's taken videos and he's given people advice on his YouTube channel for years, but like, it's just kind of taken off. And he said, in like the off season, when kids aren't in school, when these are sold out places, like 300 to 500 people will come up to him and like talk to him about this and ask him for a picture, or, or he'll catch a ball and give it to a kid or whatever. Right. Like he's like, people know about him. And there are people who don't like him. There are parents who don't like him because there's alleged times where he has maybe caught a ball that was going to go to a kid, Yeah. And there's one he's even been, I think he was quoted, and he doesn't really talk about it, of course. There's more negative press for this guy than positive, probably. But like there's some where like a kid caught a ball and then dropped it, and he ran over and grabbed it. And the guy's like, "Why'd you take the kid from the ball?" And he said, "Kid dropped it. It's my ball now. He dropped it. It's not his anymore." And then he left. And it's like, okay, would I do that?
Probably not.
I don't think so.
No.
But like, again, and this is probably the word of someone else. I don't know if that happened. It wouldn't surprise me if it did, because really, how can you possibly get that many without taking them from other
beating
people?
up a few kids along the way?
How can you possibly get that many?
Yeah, my question right now is ball storage related. When he's in the stadium and he's getting a dozen of these, where is he putting them?
He's got to. That's the thing. I don't know, because I don't know how they are with bringing bags in and stuff. I don't know.
Because like last time I checked, I felt like there's a lot of policies around this.
There usually is.
Yeah.
I think he will give a lot of them away.
Oh, so he is.
I don't know that he keeps them all.
Okay, because
he's got a huge collection.
Yes.
But I don't think he has 12,000.
The follow-up was, does he have every single one?
No, he doesn't keep them all. And the thing is, it's because doing this so much over the years, it's meant that he's actually caught quite a few balls in games that have turned out to be kind of like a valuable, kind of historical balls.
Yeah.
And so some of those include A-Rod's 3,000th career hit, which happened to be a home run.
Nice.
And Mike Trout, who I'm going to be honest, I didn't know who Mike Trout was.
I don't know a lot about him, but I know he is one of the best players in the league right now.
But as a rookie, he caught Mike Trout's first ever career home run.
Wow. Okay.
And so just for he's played 13 seasons. I looked him up. He's played 13 seasons. He's currently under a $450 million contract, and he has over 350 home runs now. He's a good player.
It's like a rookie card in a way.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so he's like, he says his most valuable one's A-Rod's 3,000th hit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but maybe my most valuable one is this one.
Yeah.
But I think the most valuable one to me, he has on third place on his website, and it's because it's connected a little bit to our podcast.
Oh, wow.
He caught the very last ever home run hit at Shea Stadium.
Wow.
Which is where we got to see our friend Michael Sergio jump out of a plane into. And I just love to hear that. That place closed in 2008. And so he didn't know, no one knew it was the last home run there,
right.
But he caught that home run, and it turns out to be the last one there. And so yeah, and again, in some of these scenarios, people are like, you have to give the ball back. Like, that's A-Rod's 3,000th hit. You got to give it to him, whatever. So in a lot of these scenarios, he does. He'll just, he'll give it back. He'll arrange, like, he's all about like giving money to like charities and sports charities for kids and all this stuff. So he'll like arrange, hey, I'll give you the ball if you donate to my charity or whatever, right?
Yep.
And so he does it for most of the, most of these situations. But it's also like, to be fair, he caught the ball.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have to give it back, but also if there's like, rich people and millions of people who are mad at you because you didn't give it, it's like, I get it, but it's like, I don't think it's illegal. Like, it's his, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Pretty sure that's how that works. But he's garnered quite a following through the years by doing this. It's actually his job now. He maybe didn't take the most traditional route that most people take to become an influencer. He worked very hard at catching balls at baseball stadiums, but it's been successful for him. His YouTube channel has 650,000 subscribers. He records himself. He has a cameraman that he'll go to games, they'll catch balls. They'll post these videos. He's got popular videos where you can just watch him catch balls. He's also got a website, and get this, okay? He's got a website. There's many things on there. You can look at his ball collection. You can look at all this kind of stuff. But there's also a way for you to hire him to go to a game with you where he guarantees you at least one ball. And which is crazy. But you can hire him. I think that's kind of amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how often this happens because, like I said, he is relatively popular. Mm-hmm. But it does cost $1,500 per game. And that's not counting travel. So if you want him to travel for you, you have to pay for his travel.
Yeah.
So it's like, he said, I'll go to a New York game with you where I ride the subway there, and you pay me $1,500 and we'll get a ball and we can go out. Yeah. But if you want me to go to like, LA, you fly me to LA, I get a hotel, and then you pay the $1,500. So it's like, I don't know how often people are doing that. Mm-hmm. That seems like a lot of money to throw around, but I'm assuming it's not rare. I would just assume that there are enough people who are like, I've never caught a ball. I think it would be awesome. I think it'd be cool to do it with this guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This seems like the kind of thing that like a C-suite level person in some venture capitalist company would be like, my 7-year-old son loves baseball and I'm going to guarantee him. And like they just drop tons of money.
Exactly. I want to be the coolest dad ever. And he did say you're allowed to like, all you're paying for is him. He's like, so if you want to bring one person or if you want to bring 30 people, you can all hang out with me, whatever. He's only guaranteeing one ball. But so he just seems like a relatively normal dude. He seems a little quirky. I mean, obviously you're going to have to be a little quirky to do what he does, but yeah, he's seen a lot of good. He's had a lot of fun. He's grown a lot, but he's also seen a lot of bad. It has definitely not been all sunshine and rainbows for this guy through the years. And like I said, he's made some kids mad. He's made some players mad. He's made some important people mad, but he's also, I think, had a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure this guy has had a blast. I know he's a bit controversial, but I think I like this guy. He's passionate about what he loves. He has tried and refined and created this beautiful system to be the best at a thing that no one else has ever even tried to do, let alone be the best at. He is very, very good at it. What else could you ask for? So here I am again at a place where we get to add another item to the factoid bucket list. And maybe this time we can make it a double header, if you will. And so maybe we could pay to see a Phillies game with Zach Hampel and catch a ball, but also throw a battery.
Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. If you have a factoid that you want to share with us, just send us an email at whatsyours@factoidpodcast.com.
And as always, you can find us every place that you get your podcasts or at our website, factoidpodcast.com.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.